feel very lonely. I have friends, but there's something about motherhood that I haven't quite figured out that just makes you feel very lonely.
Quite often in the Fundieverse, you'll find men saying that girls mature faster than boys as an excuse to date underage girls, but never as a reason to look to women as role models or for leadership. They claim this as though it is just a natural fact of life, but one could argue that this isn't something that just, quote, naturally occurs, but is due to the fact that women and girls are held to much higher standards than men early on. This isn't to say that when boys are brought up that they don't face problems of their own, but the standard is different. Typically, little boys are encouraged to be adventurous and even rambunctious. Girls tend to be treated more softly and are discouraged from exploring. They're also taught to behave and to not only be in touch with their own emotions, but the emotions of others as well. They're constantly asked to think how their actions will make another person feel, and to caretake the emotions of those around them. When it comes to maturity, there appears to be a double standard, and even more so in the Fundieverse. And this is where I want to talk about Morgan and her third child, Paul.
Why has Paul been posting so much pickleball content? More than that, I'm pushing myself to see how far I can go. I actually had the dream scenario where my lovely wife Morgan came to me and said, Paul, why don't you take this thing to the next level?
Morgan has had to step up probably beyond her comfort level in a lot of ways because she knows that's what I want, and I've had to lower my standards.
Whoa. I feel like Morgan on this particular day is too complaining or letting circumstances get her down too much, and I just want to like preach the word and say, look Morgan, like, be joyful always.
What's up everyone, it's Ashley and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Morgan and her third child, Paul. Now this isn't a full deep dive into Paul and Morgan. There have been so many people who have already done full-fledged deep dives into the saga that is Paul and Morgan. This video is specifically to cover things that are happening currently and how it highlights just how dangerous Christian patriarchy is. I wanted to highlight that double standard in this video, and I also want to talk about just some very sad and very dangerous things that appear to be happening in the Paul and Morgan universe. Specifically, I'm going to be taking a look at these three videos here. I Need to Repent, Some Christians Aren't Happy with Us, and their latest video, Pray for Morgan. We'll also be discussing her very serious illness that she's been dealing with and how Paul is being Paul throughout it. Before we get into that, let's do a brief overview of Paul and Morgan. Again, like I said, this isn't a deep dive, but if you would like my take on a deep dive, let me know below. But in the meantime, here are some relevant facts about Paul and Morgan before we get into what's currently happening today. Paul and Morgan are fundie influencers.
What's up guys, how you doing? I'm Paul.
I'm Morgan.
And this is the Paul and Morgan, the Paul and Morgan Show.
They are anti-trans, they love Trump, they think depression is demons.
You have the authority to crush all demonic spirits that come your way. You have the authority to get better. Just believe it, guys.
I believe that mental illnesses are one of the biggest ways the enemy works in people's lives. Because, you know, how easy is it for the enemy to attack the mind and the brain and the chemicals? Like, it's so easy for him. Like, he has control. He can do that. Like, he really can.
Just believe it, guys.
If you took Zoolander, Tom Sandoval from Vanderpump Rules, and Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, you would have Paul. He even does the drawings like Patrick Bateman.
I'm Paul.
I don't really feel.
They've been around for a few years now, and they've definitely had their fair share of controversies. Like the time Paul compared women wanting rights to plantation owners wanting slaves.
Could we not have said that about slave owners? Could we not have said, as she said, it's a practical conversation about women's rights? Could we not have said, hey, the people that are against slavery, cut that out. This is about slave owners' rights. It's going to be a big inconvenience to their lives and to their life goals, because there are a lot of these young plantation owners that have big dreams and big goals, and you're going to strip their slaves away because slave owners' rights are humans' rights. Am I not allowed to say that? What do you guys think?
Wow, crazy. You're crazy, girl.
Just believe it, guys. guys.
And even though Morgan doesn't wear sundresses and make videos of her baking sourdough bread all day, I would still classify her as a trad wife. The core tenet of being a trad wife is adhering to biblical gender roles, and that is something that Paul and Morgan very much espouse as fundamentalist Christians.
I need to make sure that I am following my calling of what the Lord has called me to do as a woman, and that is submit to my husband. And even, like, it doesn't say submit to your husband only if he's great, is super perfect, communicates really well with you, blah, blah, blah.
That's just an added bonus for Morgan. Booyah!
Paul and Morgan have 2 very young children, and I would argue Morgan technically has 3 children, as I've said a few times. Paul's immaturity and poor ability to be a real leader or even a thoughtful, kind, caring partner and father is something that has been highlighted for as long as they've been online, I believe.
This article here from Salon really sums up Paul and Morgan, in my opinion. They say, despite the glossy and often expensive aesthetics of this content, however, the model of marriage on display is alienating, especially to women. Take a recent video by Paul and Morgan Oligus, who describe themselves as, quote, Christian YouTubers who are, quote, getting real and having fun, to their 160,000 YouTube subscribers. In it, the couple showcases the events of a week, where Morgan confesses she barely sleeps, having been relegated to the baby's room so Paul can be fully rested for his pickleball tournament. We see that she is run ragged and emotionally raw from endless domestic labor, while he films himself hitting the gym and bragging about how many smoothies he can drink. They claim the goal of showing this disparity is to, quote, get real, i.e. be relatable for the audience. The actual effect can be seen in the comments, where people said things like, quote, this is a reminder that someone can be an absent father even when they're technically there.
Very unclear on how they are making a living. It appears as though YouTube would not be enough to cover their expenses, and people have speculated that Paul perhaps has like an Instacart sort of a job, or perhaps even they get public assistance, and there's nothing wrong with either one of those things. I'm just bringing this up as a bit of backstory, and you'll also see that Morgan is constantly saying that Paul is working.
I have to see if my neighbor can come over and help me get Judah out of the crib because Paul's working.
But it just appears as though he's playing pickleball all day.
Although it appears that Paul's mother is paying for some of his pickleball lessons. I found this photo on Reddit and I blurred out his mom's name because she's not a public figure, so don't go looking for her. But I did find this on the subreddit. So Paul appears to have 2 moms. Very progressive.
A lot of people online have just looked at their relationship and have noticed the differences between the lives that they seem to be living, at least what they portray on social media. Her Instagram stories are filled with just so much heaviness and strife about the struggles that she is experiencing as a stay-at-home mom, and now with her health, which we will talk about in just a minute, which juxtaposed against what Paul represents, which is just, hey guys, I'm eating a Klondike bar and I think I'm gonna go to the gym.
In addition to this, there is also a stark difference in the ways that they speak about themselves. Paul tends to deem himself a champion, whereas Morgan, especially as it relates to her role as a mother, tends to tell herself she isn't doing enough, even when arguably it appears she is holding together much more and experiencing much more stress than Paul on a day-to-day basis.
Deep down, like, I'm great, I'm awesome. Every time I step on the court, the field, I am the best player. How are you going to get to the highest level without having that confidence?
I think it's easy as moms to give ourselves too much grace. For me personally, like, I have a 9-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, and I feel like for a couple months now, like, I could have been doing more with my time, like being more wise with my time, but I think I was giving myself too much grace.
While these may be traits just inherent to Paul and Morgan as individuals, in society, this trend of men being grandiose in their self-assumptions and women feeling as though they are not enough is common. Some people may be apt to, once again, blame women and their apparent lack of self-esteem on, quote, biology, but I would argue that it is the differences in how we socialize boys versus how we socialize girls aka the patriarchy, which I know is a word some people don't like, but that is what I'm talking about. There is a confidence gap between women and men, and it is not due to some inherent biological structure or setup, but it is due to how society treats men and women and has for centuries. Girls are treated more softly and told early on that the world is dangerous, whereas boys are generally encouraged to take risks and assert themselves, activities that inherently boost confidence. An example of this is a mother encouraging her young son to go out and climb and roughhouse while sheltering her daughter from doing the same. This can teach a young girl that 1, she isn't capable of climbing on her own, and can also create a sense of learned helplessness and vulnerability, and a sense of incompetence. She isn't afforded the same chance to explore and build self-esteem. And as we've stated, girls are typically socialized to contain themselves, to behave, and to care for others. As this article from Centerstone.org states, the contradictory messaging that girls receive from society only exacerbates this problem. They are bombarded with expectations to be perfect, yet humble, ambitious, yet accommodating. These high expectations follow them throughout adulthood. A woman is never enough. In her book, Rage Becomes Her, Soraya Chemaly writes, "Throughout adolescence, boys retain the sense that they are exceptional and competent, despite the fact that girls outpace them in grade point average and college ambitions. One 2017 study of American children found that, at 5 years old, boys and girls are equally likely to associate genius with their own gender. 1 year later, boys still make that association, but girls don't. At age 6 and 7, 65% of boys believe that boys and men are, quote, really, really smart, while only 48% of girls think girls and women are. It may be that boys are overconfident and that girls are actually more realistic, but the gap is notable in any case. Even the framing of a confidence gap issue often assumes that a standard of male confidence is what girls and women should seek to achieve. Men and boys are typically rewarded when they exert high self-esteem. However, certain men, misogynists, have an obsession with calling women with confidence narcissistic or selfish, while men can just act like Paul. Now, this is not to say that men do not have their own set of standards to live up to. It's just different, and I can make a whole video about that as well, but for this video here, we are specifically talking about this in terms of women and the patriarchy.
One could argue that just because the two of them are presenting differently on social media, that doesn't mean anything, right? What people show on social media isn't always representative of real life, as we deeply discussed in my last video. However, as we'll talk about in a little bit here, Paul and Morgan, particularly Paul, at least very much like to give the appearance that they are raw and real and that everything is like a teachable moment for their audience.
Paul has also exhibited very toxic and competitive attitudes towards Morgan. Anytime Morgan has something going for her or is shining at something or has any attention whatsoever, Paul tends to swoop in and make it about himself. One of the first examples of this is with Morgan's singing. So Morgan, very famously, before she became a fundie influencer, had a very secular music career, and she's a great singer. She's very talented. Since meeting Paul, she occasionally will release like a Christian kind of song. But in this video here, you can see just how toxic Paul is towards Morgan and her singing.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Morgan! And I'm here with my husband Paul, and we're gonna do an acapella short version of like I'm Gonna Lose You. And I'm doing this for Polly because I love him. And even though it makes me really nervous to sing acapella and
Sing with me, just say it.
yeah, and to sing with Paul because for some reason.
All right, I get really competitive for some reason.
Yeah.
I get like I don't know what it is.
And it makes me nervous.
The second area where this is evident and also extremely sad is with pickleball itself. So I've mentioned a few times that Paul is obsessed with becoming a pickleball pro, but pickleball was originally Morgan's hobby, and it was a hobby she was not only very good at, but it was something that was helping her with her postpartum depression.
Let's talk about why I love pickleball so much. I started playing pickleball about a little before Luca was 3 months old, and it was just a lot of fun, and it really was the first thing that I did after being pregnant with Luca. Oh, like, this is my thing. This is freedom in a sense of, like, my mind can just solely focus on the sport. I can just relax. I can feel like it's a hobby. Like, it's a hobby. I was also very much, still in the trenches of postpartum and infant, baby, child, first-time mom stuff, and I didn't realize like how consuming that was, and the racing thoughts and the anxiety of like feeling like you're not doing it right or whatever. And the first time that I played pickleball, I remember like my mind just went like and I could just breathe and rest, and like Luca was taking a nap or asleep or whatever, and I was just like, felt so much weight be lifted off of me. It sounds so dramatic, but it was just so freeing. So good to have a hobby, moms out there. If you don't have a hobby where you can put your child in to bed or have your husband watch them and go do this hobby, like, get one. For you to have something where you can just go breathe, relax, do it with friends, do it with your spouse, like, it's just really is so important, and I've found so much fulfillment in playing pickleball.
I'm not going to read this entire post that Morgan made about pickleball, but I want to highlight this one comment here. Go somewhere where people call you by your name. I opened this video with this clip of Morgan where she states, I don't know what it is, but there's something about motherhood that makes you very lonely.
I feel very lonely. I have friends, but there's something about motherhood that I haven't quite figured out that just makes you feel very lonely.
Betty Freidan touches on this a little bit in The Feminine Mystique, and she calls it the problem that has no name. Freidan writes, just what is this problem that has no name? What were the words women used when they tried to express it? Sometimes a woman would say, I feel empty somehow, incomplete. Or she would say, I feel as though I don't exist. A mother of 4 who left college at 19 to get married told me, I've tried everything women are supposed to do. Hobbies, gardening, pickling, canning, being very social with my neighbors, joining committees, running PTA teas. I can do it all, and I like it, but it just doesn't leave you anything to think about or any feeling about who you are. I never had any career ambitions. All I wanted to do was get married and have 4 children. I love the kids and Bob and my home. There's no problem you can even put a name to, but I'm desperate. I feel like I have no personality. I'm a server of food and a putter on of pants and a bed maker. Somebody who can be called when you want something. But who am I? But this is what you see Morgan talking about, and this is what you see playing out with Paul and Morgan. This becomes a really big issue and a problem when we talk about the I Need to Repent video. When I show this later on, you're going to see how even more messed up that is, but I wanted to just go ahead and put that in the overview for now. And the final and most egregious example I'm going to give is Paul acting as though Morgan being on stroke watch is also a competition. It's really impacting her health, both physically and mentally. This post by Paul is super weird, in my opinion, especially while Morgan is sick.
2.5 years ago, I could barely move. You guys remember, I ended up getting back surgery, a minor back surgery. I was out. If you would have asked me 2.5 years ago, or told me, I guess, Paul, in 2.5 years, not only are you going to be up and moving again and the pain's not going to be what it is, but you're actually going to be on a road to try to be a professional pickleball player, that would have been insane. It would have blown my mind. But here I am. So even though I feel kind of bleh, I'm going to go hit the gym, baby.
Actually, I'm sorry, I think I'm having a panic attack. I'm having a panic attack too. My panic attack's having a panic attack. It's called a panic attack, it's worse.
While we are examining the double standards and harm of this relationship and of patriarchy in general, make no mistake, Morgan is still an awful person, okay? I want to make it clear that I'm not just giving her a pass on all of the terrible things that she has done and said, and she has some agency and has also chosen to perpetuate this behavior and has very bigoted opinions that hurt a lot of other people. So I'm not giving her a full pass on that. I think there can be a little nuance here. Even though she's a victim of this, it doesn't mean that she gets a full pass for all of her bigoted and terrible behavior either. So So that's the Paul and Morgan backstory clip notes, and that brings us up to what's happening today.
In the past few weeks, Morgan has been experiencing very, very serious health issues.
She tells the story of it here in their latest video, Pray for Morgan. So let's get right into the video. So Paul opens the video with what is obviously the most important thing, acknowledging that this must be content for the audience.
It was kind of like we gotta open up here on YouTube and talk about this.
Yes, have your wife tell this traumatic story to her audience of haters, which she has said so many times stresses her out.
Like, this is interesting stuff.
Yeah, everyone, it's like totally interesting stuff. He talks about this from such a removed standpoint. He always seems to view what is happening, especially when it comes to Morgan, as content and not really as Morgan having a human experience. It's very weird. Morgan's pain has been Paul's profit in multiple videos, and the worst example of that is the birth story, where Morgan is close to dying for real, like in the video, and Paul just keeps rolling, keeps filming. I know that the title of my video, Marrying a Man-Child Might Kill You, is a bit intense, but I'm not kidding. They later revealed that one of the reasons why Morgan had such terrible consequences was because they did not listen to their midwife when it came to taking antibiotics. Not only are they anti-woman, they're also anti-science.
So if you had been taking antibiotics, it may have
kept me from getting a fever.
Man, that's crazy.
I know.
Where are we gonna go if not just trust the Lord?
Trust your midwife.
Morgan, how are you feeling?
All right, let's start from the beginning.
He asked how she's feeling and then immediately cut away. Doesn't even wait for her to respond, and that is so, it's almost symbolic, right?
She explained that she went to work out in the morning and then later in the day started getting a pain in the back of her skull. She came home and she started to build a swing set that her father had started. And at this point, Paul interjects.
Real quick, I'm sorry. Apologize. I was mowing while you were building the swing set, right?
Yes, babe.
For the haters.
Paul interjects to make sure that the audience knows that he was doing the manly thing of mowing the lawn while she built the swing set. Morgan reveals, no, Paul, you literally were playing pickleball.
I was mowing. Pretty sure, right? Wasn't I?
You went and played pickleball.
And that's not to say that a woman can't build a swing set. Clearly they can. But this is just one example of Paul really failing at what they claim to be are their biblical gender roles. It's funny, it's cute. Paul just gets to act like he's a 14-year-old all the time while Morgan struggles and takes care of the kids and has to be essentially the one carrying the burden of most of the important things in their life, including, I would say, earning money through this content that Paul is pushing.
But you gotta work, unless you're a stay-at-home mom, but then your job never ends, literally. And so that's still a job.
So the next day, the pain gets worse, and she is nauseous, and she is like having blackouts in her vision. So they get her neighbor, who is a physical therapist, to come and look at her. And he says, yeah, I think maybe you tweaked it, but if you start, getting sick and it starts getting worse, or you start getting confused, go to the ER. So the next day, it's worse. Shooting pain, she's getting sick, and at one point, it's so bad that she is experiencing massive confusion to the point where she doesn't even know that she's in her own bathroom.
And I just start hysterically crying. It's so weird how I remember this, but I didn't know where I was. I couldn't wrap my mind around the idea that I was in my bathroom. It was so weird. So I start crying.
But she was saying yeah, where am I? I'm crying. And so it just got to the point, took her to the ER.
I want to backtrack here and point out that before going to the ER, it was really a delayed decision. Paul kept asking Morgan, are you sure that you want to go?
Yeah, so went to the ER a little bit later. Not immediately, but probably an hour later. Because he kind of asked me, he was like, do you want to go to the hospital? I'm like, I don't like hospitals.
And I can understand to a degree. I mean, going to the ER is serious, and nobody ever wants to go to the ER. The neighbor who was a physician and checked her out said if you experience confusion, you need to go to the ER. The fact that they waited is really sad to me. The fact is they both kept doing everything they could to discount the pain and discount what was happening, which is something that a lot of women experience. At one point, Paul is even trying to say, Morgan, I think you just have sun poisoning.
And she got a really bad sunburn. So I'm talking to my brother and he's like, I'm pretty sure it's, shout out to my brother, he's awesome, but he's like, I'm pretty sure it's sun poisoning. I had that and I had some of these symptoms.
If my wife was in the bathroom not knowing where she is, we're going to the ER immediately. Even if it was just sun poisoning, if you don't know where you are, you're crying, you're sobbing in great pain, and you don't know you're in your own home, you gotta go to the ER. But I think that this is indicative of something else that comes into play when it comes to patriarchal roles in society and gender bias. Referencing Soraya Chemaly's Rage Becomes Her again, she states, studies in implicit bias consistently show that most people, including, importantly, medical professionals of all genders and ethnicities, have a difficult time taking women's pain seriously. Sexist and racist stereotypes about melodramatic women and pain immunity not only affect perceptions but also behavior, including that of women. Many women internalize the same stereotypes and, not wanting to be seen as angry, hysterical, and demanding, opt for unhealthy and risky stoicism. They second-guess themselves, delaying care and discounting symptoms. Patriarchal gender roles, especially in the fundamentalist Christian realm, are dangerous to women's health. Christian patriarchy is not only anti-woman, it is also anti-science. So all of this together just adds a great danger. This is why I wanted to talk about this so much and to frame it in reference to the patriarchy as a whole. These systems ask women to sacrifice their lives, both figuratively and literally.
So she goes to the ER, but the wait is too long and she and her mother decide to leave, and her mother gets like a mobile IV person to come give her fluids since she's been being sick, and that helps her a little bit. But the next day it's still worse. She can't handle it, and they decide again to go to the ER. There's no wait this time, so she gets sent right in. The doctor looks over Morgan and he thinks it's just a really bad neck tweak. You did a new workout. The doctor says, I'm 99% sure that's what it is. There is one thing that's very serious, but there's only a 1% chance that it could be that. But I think it's that she just tweaked your neck and that you'll be fine. But we do want to check for the really serious thing. And Paul is like, it's the 99% thing. Great, doc, I'm gonna go.
And in my mind, I'm like, that's what I thought too, doctor. She has a bad neck tweak, sunburn, migraine, and here's her symptoms.
When Paul hears that it's like, oh yeah, that's what I thought it was gonna be like you hurt your neck and you have sun poisoning. So he just dips. And he says in the video that it's because he had 30-minute parking, but even that to me is kind of suspicious because your partner is going to the ER, and that typically takes a long time. The fact that he chose 30-minute parking is interesting to me. I don't know the situation. I wasn't there. I only know what they've told us. To me, that just seems strange. Like, why would you choose 30-minute parking knowing that your partner is going into the ER? To me, that kind of reads as having the mindset of like, gosh, Morgan, I know you're vomiting. I know you're sick. I know you've got all of this scary stuff going on. You don't even know where you are right now. But I mean, I gotta get to pickleball, so let's just give it 30 minutes. But they perform the test and it turns out that it is actually the very serious thing that they didn't think would be the issue. So Paul comes back to discuss this with the doctors with Morgan. So the first doctor comes in and says, hey, you may never be able to pick up your kids again. This is a very serious issue and it's so rare in people who are your age where you need to do some genetic testing to see if you have a condition called VEDS. So the doctor comes in and tells Morgan that she cannot pick up her kids for at least 6 weeks. She can't do any heavy lifting, and even insinuates that at one point she may never be able to pick up her kids again without risking very serious injuries such as a stroke to herself. And rightfully so, they're very disheartened at hearing that news. But Paul's response to the doctor is, but ChatGPT didn't say that. So the doctor, who has spent years studying her profession and has experience diagnosing and treating this illness, is immediately wrong.
First of all, like, who the heck do you think you are telling me I'm never gonna lift my kids again, bro? Like, go away. I'm not listening to anything you have to say
and also
anymore.
ChatGPT and just looking stuff up on Google, it was like saying, you know, like ease back into it.
So if you had been taking antibiotics, it may have
kept me from getting a fever.
And that's crazy.
I know.
I'm not against getting a second opinion, especially when you're getting really scary news like this, but that second opinion should not be ChatGPT.
So they did an MRI and they ordered tests for a condition called VEDS. And Morgan has been on stroke watch since that time. She's also had to get neighbors and family come help her with the kids because her kids are babies. They need to be picked up. They have to be held. They are completely dependent on her. And Paul is playing pickleball.
Why has Paul been posting so much pickleball content?
Paul is assigned the role of being the leader of the house. That is what is lined out according to them in their biblical gender roles. But Paul is the last thing that you would see as the leader of a household, of a real leader. To me, it seems as though Paul has a very elementary understanding of what it is to be a leader. I think many of these guys do. But a real leader is able to care for people. The Bible says that we're supposed to have dominion over the plants and animals, but these plants and animals also sustain our life. We're meant to take care of them, not just control them. But that seems to not be the way these fundies are thinking about it, but who am I? Paul exemplifying a sort of Peter Pan syndrome where he gets to continue to follow his own hearts and dreams while Morgan is faced with the realities of not being able to do anything like that anymore now that she is a parent, is really highlighted in this video here. So let's talk about the I need to repent video. I want to give a little bit of a trigger warning, especially if you're someone who has dealt with just straight up manipulation or spiritual abuse or spiritual bypassing. It's a little difficult to watch. It starts off with a vlog for a pickleball tournament that they were going to compete in, and you see them playing, and there's a little confessional for Paul where he realizes, wow, maybe I can't be a pickleball pro right when I think I can. It's gonna take more work than I thought.
Guys, just keeping it real talk. I'm about a week and a half shy of the 5-month mark from when I started training very intensely in the pursuit of going pro, playing at the highest level. And I think I'm seeing still a bigger gap between myself and these highest level players, a bigger gap than I anticipated at this time.
But long story short, they end the tournament, Morgan loses her round, and Morgan wants to stay the night in the city where the tournament was, which I believe was 4 hours away from their home, but Paul did not want to. And of course, Paul being the head of the household, they went home. And just like Morgan predicted, the car ride was absolutely awful the whole way. And when they get home, Paul, the leader of the household, has chosen the most appropriate time to process and vlog the entire situation, which is immediately after it's happened, claiming that this is the most real and authentic way to do it.
Just keeping it real talk. Well, guys, if I'm being honest, vlogging is one of the last things that we want to do right now.
I don't believe you.
Oftentimes these times are the most appropriate times, if we're just being real, the most appropriate times to vlog, because it is showing the realities of life.
To me, I view that as very manipulative and unfair. You've gone through something, emotions are high, and now you want people to process this for your audience, an audience of haters, which Morgan in the video later says she doesn't want to do. She knows haters are watching. So the fact that Paul just puts her on the spot is very uncaring of a partner to do that.
And again, I'm not trying to like put Morgan on the spot. I'm not trying to make something bigger than what it is.
No, this most definitely isn't a way to emotionally manipulate someone under the guise of being real and helping viewers. It's just a teachable moment from Paul.
Real talk.
It couldn't possibly be another way to shame her.
Go, Morgan. Tell him what happened.
So as Morgan goes on to tell her side of the story, she says, yeah, I didn't want to take this 4-hour drive. Why? Because she was concerned about the children's sleep schedules. Why? Because she is the one that has to take care of the children. She knows the children. She knows how they're going to behave in the car. And she knows if the sleep schedule is messed up tonight, it might be a nightmare tomorrow. A nightmare that she will have to walk alone while Paul just does whatever he wants.
I just had a very, very gut-wrenching feeling that the drive was not going to go well. I knew that Judah specifically probably wasn't going to get amazing naps, which means we would have an overtired baby who doesn't like being in the car in general for long periods of times, and the timing was going to be super weird, and I was correct. I was freaking right. So the first hour...
Well, and I was optimistic.
In my opinion, a leader would take this information and consider it thoughtfully instead of just acting on a whim and doing what they feel like doing, which is what Paul did. Paul said, no, actually, I asked ChatGPT. My kids are going to be fine.
Also, ChatGPT and just looking stuff up on Google.
Morgan is coming at this from a very mature and realistic standpoint, but somehow, all of what is about to happen is Morgan's fault. The blame is placed on Morgan, and Morgan is the one who must somehow repent.
Luca fell asleep at 9:30. Judah fell asleep at 10:10. So literally for 4 hours, Judah...
Hey, you're all about the details,
screamed
though.
and cried. No, it's part of the story.
Well, yeah, no, right.
And it's why it was a ride from hell.
You're all about the details.
Oh, you're all about the details. Yeah, because you asked her to tell the story. And this is where Paul is, in my opinion, doing something very covertly, shifting the blame on Morgan again. He goes, oh, you're all about the details. Well, let's talk about this detail here.
As soon as we left the pickleball place, we ran to get food and then get on the road. We go to Freddy's Burgers. Morgan was in the mood for Freddy's Burgers. We sit there in the line
for probably 35 minutes. Like, literally terrible. And we're trapped. Like, we can't get out. It's like there's like a literal hill that we cannot drive our car over.
So we're sitting there, and then that's when like the kids start crying.
Actually, it was Morgan wanting the burgers and how long it was taking. That's the reason why the kids got so upset. That's like he's covertly pushing that onto her. So it's Morgan's fault. That's just what I'm picking up on here.
And it was even in that moment, I just felt like there was, I don't want to like over spiritualize it, but just this spiritual heaviness of kind of like, all right, here we go. We can kind of choose mentally and spiritually and emotionally how we're going to react.
Paul is saying, you know, we can mentally and spiritually choose how we react. And in this moment, he means Morgan.
Like, I just was feeling that. I don't know, were you feeling that?
I just had a very, very gut-wrenching feeling that the drive was not going to go well.
I knew that Judah specifically probably wasn't going to get amazing naps, which means we would have an overtired baby who doesn't like being in the car in general for long periods of time.
At this mark here, she says, I don't want to be processing this on camera, and I know that we have a million haters.
I just don't really want to be processing this on camera.
Okay.
Knowing that we have a million haters who are going to make stupid videos about this.
So there it is. To me, this just feels like a humiliation ritual. I think Paul feels like some responsibility for this, but he's gonna make Morgan be the one to repent. This is my opinion, right? I don't know these people personally. This is just how it reads to me. Let's humiliate Morgan right now instead of taking any ownership in my part of being a bad leader. Because if I humiliate Morgan now, if I shame her now, if I make her feel bad now, she's not going to do it again. She's not going to be upset again. She's going to search for that heart posture again. Instead of voicing her opinion, her knowledge of the situation. She's not going to question Paul again because he's covertly shamed her and convinced her that it wasn't that he made a poor decision as a leader. It's that she just wasn't coming at this from a heart posture.
You were not hiding your mental and emotional state. You were having a terrible, terrible time. And I was praying for you under my breath. God gave me, I think, just more grace to endure.
And honestly, this is really hard to watch. She just starts crying. I'm not a Paul and Morgan fan. I think Paul and Morgan have said and done things that are atrocious. But as a human being, I can look at this situation and say, I feel bad for Morgan. She's saying, I didn't get to play as well as I wanted in this game because I'm not like other people. Everyone else gets to play as long as they want. And what about me? I'm making all these people watch my kids. This is something Paul never has to think about.
I'm just mad at myself for like a lot of reasons. I'm mad at myself for doing this pickleball tournament because it's just like not the time in my life to be doing this pickleball tournament stuff. Like, And so like I made it 10 times harder on me and everyone around us because they all had to watch my kids. And like, why did I do the tournament? Like, what the crap was the point of that? And then I feel like I worked really hard to like play well at the tournament, and I just didn't do what I hoped I would do. And it just sucks to lose so much. Like, it just hurts.
Hey, let me ask you this real quick. And I appreciate you opening up. Do you feel like there were any moments in the tournament where you were like, wow, like I've actually am playing well and the work I've put in has paid off and I am enjoying it?
Not really. Like, I knew that I was playing well, but it wasn't good enough. And so that's just what sucks. But it's like, of course it wasn't good enough. I can't play every day of my life. Like, I'm a mom of 2 kids. These people that we're going up against play so much more than me. So like, what did I expect? It's just stupid.
Part of postpartum and part of the stresses that I've heard people talk about that come with motherhood is this sense of a loss of yourself. It's like a death of your old life. But in this section here, she is lamenting that loss. I could have played better. I could have played how I wanted had I had the time to do that. But I have kids. And then she shames herself again in this situation and says, ugh, what did I bring people here for? To watch my kids while I do this. None of that has ever crossed Paul's mind, because he still gets to live in his Peter Pan type fantasy of being a boy who never grows up, and he just gets to go for his dreams no matter what. In my opinion, this is a burden that should be shared by both of them, or something that they should work out together. But that is not what the standard is in a patriarchal marriage, right?
Yeah, there was a lot. It wasn't just like, man, our kids are screaming for a car ride. Like, there was a lot more that was in the air.
So she starts crying, and at this point, he just turns to the audience. He doesn't give her any comfort at all. You know, all the grace he just talked about God bestowing on him, where is it? Is the grace in the room with us right now? So then at the end of the video, Morgan comes on and she goes, you know what? I've had an encounter with God, and I went to go tell Paul, and Paul said, babe, go film it right away. Explains that she saw a reel on Instagram and it really affected her emotionally, which is not something that normally happens for her. In the reel, a man had lost his wife to cancer, and Morgan describes this reel as being used by the Lord to just wreck her, and she just feels so guilty about the other night when she didn't have a heart posture through what was effectively something that could have been avoidable had Paul listened to her, but also a human reaction. Your kids are screaming all night long, your husband didn't listen to what you wanted, and it was a mess. You also were hurting because you lost the tournament. You are a human being. Yes, it is nice to try to see the good and to remember to be grateful for what you have in life, and your feelings do matter. You are a human being. She's essentially been guilted into thinking that if she doesn't have a heart posture 24/7, then she is spitting in the face of all that she has been given by the Lord. There's so many things that happen in life that are random, and it is very important to be grateful for what you have. And concept has been manipulated by a lot of fundies. If you step out of line in any way, shape, or form, you will lose everything. God will punish you for every single thing you had. And it causes people to want to stay in line. I find it very sad to watch her go through that process. And again, it is Morgan that must feel this way. It is Morgan that must repent. It is never Paul that has to question his actions in this. Yes, it's important to be very grateful, but the immense shame and Paul making this into a whole public humiliation ritual of sorts is alarming. He did get a lot of pushback from this. People really were all over this video. But even then, Paul has found a way to just call the audience woke. He's not taking any sort of responsibility for that, but the level of shaming that Morgan must feel and the fact that she must carry the entire burden of this, does Paul feel that way at all? But is Paul being asked to have a heart posture? Is Paul being asked to reflect and say, wow, if I had made a different decision, if I had listened to my wife, she wouldn't have had to experience all of the pain and strife that she did, all of the stress that she did, and neither would my children. Is Paul being asked to say that? Now that Morgan is sick, is Paul being asked to repent and say, I haven't been as great of a husband as I could have been. I haven't listened to you. I've used your emotions and vulnerability for content. When Morgan makes a reel kind of making fun of her husband, a reel that Paul asked her to make, she was being a godly wife by doing what her husband said and saying, hey, let's make this real. When she does that, her Christian audience goes after her. They go after her and say she's being a bad wife. This is not the submissive wife you're supposed to be. But none of them ever seem to light a fire under Paul in the same way. And whether you want to put this through the lens of the patriarchy or not, you could just erase that if that's just not what you want to think about. It's still not right. I chose to frame this video through the lens of the patriarchy and how many times women are held to a much higher standard than men. And many conservative men will come out and say that girls mature faster than boys, but they don't say that as a way to encourage leadership or to encourage them to be role models. They mostly say it to encourage the lowering of the age of consent. That's weird. That's very, very fucking weird. I don't know that it's true that girls mature faster than boys. What I do think is that people are typically treated differently based on gender. And these stereotypes are not just harmful, but it can be deadly. It can have deadly consequences for all genders, okay? So yeah, what do you think of Paul and Morgan? I'm curious to hear, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.